Welcome to ITLGL After Dark with your host, Wallace Ryan.
Yay! And the mistress of comics herself,
Luna.
Yay! Now, of course, this is our Forbidden Comics, our naughty edition.
Dun dun dun.
So we'll start off
With a banned book, apparently.
yes, and recently, which is something both amazing and shocking. So I thought it would start the parade of naughty and bad books. Now, when I have forbidden or naughty comics, these are still comics that are great, that have to be read, and or are good for some reason or another, or I admire because they upset people. In my early days as a cartoonist, if I wasn't getting someone mad, then I didn't think I was doing my job as a cartoonist, right? Well, let me flip the screen back out here. That's some nice, isn't it, hey? I love that. But now this, this of course, is an unfortunate forbidden book because, you know, some libraries, or there was a story there a few months ago and they banned Mouse, and it's absolutely terrible banning a book on the Holocaust. It's just like, my God. And I mean, it's a great book. If you haven't already read it, you have to read it.
But they'll make a cartoon about it, and that's allowed.
Yeah, exactly, right? Yeah, that Diary of Anne Frank, whatever it was. Oh God, that was terrible. If any of you haven't seen that Disney movie yet, do us all a favor and don't. But this, you have to get out and buy Mouse. It's one of the best books, and I've read a lot of books on the Holocaust, right? And this is one of the best, winner of the Pulitzer Prize, which is saying something. So far, the only comic to win a Pulitzer Prize. Okay.
So it's Tales from the Crypt.
Tales from the Crypt. No. Now this is here because this was part of the company that led to the Comics Code Authority. That's why I even wore my Comics Code Authority T-shirt. Because parents in the 50s got so upset and were so horrified by what they were seeing in Tales from the Crypt and some of the other EC Comics titles. They thought that there was too much gore and violence and all that, which there probably was, but I mean, it was kind of good gore and violence. Great tales, scary tales, and the artwork was great. And of course, once they started banning all that and brought in the Comics Code Authority, it ruined comics for many years, till the 70s hit. And that was the start of the end for the Comics Code Authority, right? But these guys were driven out of business more or less by the Comics Code, except for one. They were only left with one comic, Mad, which they turned into a magazine, and that escaped the Comics Code Authority, because the Comics Code Authority only applied to comics. Now this is another recent banning.
Really?
Yeah, and this was self-banned from Disney. They said they were going to take a couple of stories out of this, because of this zombie, it's the zombie of this black guy, and it's just like, well, this is, it's I don't think it's as bad as some of the 30s or 40s type of things, but it kind of looks bad, but he's a zombie. I think they've mistaken it.
The complete life and times of Scrooge McDuck. You might as well tell them what you're talking about.
Oh yeah,
first.
And this is it, of course, the life and times of Scrooge McDuck, one of the classics of duckdom, one of the best duck comics of all time. And here they're saying, and of course people went mad buying up all these editions once they said it, because it's just like, well, you'll only get a complete, definitive collection by buying the older books. No use buying any new collections of the life and times of Scrooge McDuck. And I encourage people not to, and then even write Disney and tell them why that you're so ticked off at them, right? So yeah, that one really makes me mad. Oh,
here we go.
Here we go. Now we get into the smutty stuff. This is Black Kiss. This was it was in the late 80s, early 90s. It was a Howard Chaykin comic, and big fan of Howard Chaykin itself. But it was chock-a-block with sex and violence, and it just absolutely astounded and disgusted people at the time.
Really?
Yeah, and I'd had a few issues of it. It was hard to get because they were bad. They were seasoned it left, right, and center. I think I was surprised that I was actually able to get this shipped to Canada, because sometimes they'll seize any comics with any sexual content in it. So this was one of the more infamous comics from back then. So just lots of sex, lots of violence. I had to throw this in. This is as forbidden as all you comic people out there know as it gets with it. But at least Howard Chicken, at least it was very well drawn. I think, right?
Think he had a model?
I'm not sure. You know, he could have, right? But yeah, all kinds of dirty sex and stuff like that in it. But beautifully drawn. This came out. Who was it? I think this might have been from Vortex at the time, right?
I'm thinking he had a model.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. But yeah, and actually Dennis gave me this because he knew I was a big fan of Howard, and so was he.
Thanks, Dennis.
Now this is actually a new book I picked up recently.
Are we even allowed to say this?
I think so.
Tits and Clits.
Tits and Clits. It's a collection of the famous underground comic by a small group of women, and I put it in because of course it's very sexually explicit and
very heavy.
And yeah, and it's of course, I mean, a lot of it has to do with sex, abortion, all kinds of hot button issues back in the day. It was from 78 to 87 it ran.
Tell YouTube to stop showing me that shit.
Yeah. But I mean, this is filled with, like I say, I've only read a bit of it because I just got it this week.
Oh, here we go.
And I love the covers, right? So people always talk about the underground comics of the 60s and how they were filled with sex and violence, and they always point out Robert Crumb and how bad he, and how nasty his comics were. But it's just like, the women, when given their opportunity, they nastied just as good as Robert did, right? But I mean, they're intended to be, because it was a sexual revolution, so these comics were intended to shock at the time. It was just like, think about the hippies. They wanted to bring down the establishment, right? Okay.
Next up, we have Spent by Joe Matt.
Yes, this is one of my favorite series of short comic series of all time. It was called Peep Show that he did, and
Wishing won't make it happen.
I loved it.
Oh, and it's that finger that I don't like.
There it is. Yeah. Well, there's where I get it. But his comics I love. He talks about issues that no one would dare talk about. I mean, he talks about masturbation and all that in this. As a matter of fact, a lot of it is.
Are you sure you're allowed to say these words?
Oh yeah. Oh yes. So it's a filthy book, but very funny. It's just like these, and this is why I mean.
Parents, keep your kids away from these books.
Oh yeah, but adults, run out and get these. Especially anything I haven't seen Drawn and Quarterly reissue a lot of Joe's stuff, which is terrible because it's.
I mean, it doesn't interest me. It looks pretty bland.
Oh, it's very funny, very funny. Trust me. If you read it, you'd get a laugh out of it.
Read us something.
What's that?
Read us something.
Oh God, I know I can't. It depends. Like oh God. Oh, there's him with his cat. There's my little girl. There's the Moddy Mod. The old pooper Mod. You little scrapper. Let's go over to bed. Lay down. Mod. Fine, go. Who needs you? Stupid cat. I should get back to my dubbing anyway. And he's dubbing pornographic films, right? to express himself too. So it's but yeah. So it's as a matter of fact, I like the comic on the back. These two girls come across his collection and they pick it up and they read it and they're like, oh my God, oh he's like whacking off, and they're like really disgusted by the whole thing. They walk away. Poor old Joe's sitting there, But Peep Show, one of my favorites. But any of Joe's stuff is, it's just so well written and funny. I don't care how outrageous it is, right?
I guess it's relatable.
Yeah, in a way, yes. Not that I ever did that. Okay, next up is this one here is from his friend, his pal.
For it, Chester Brown.
Yeah.
Introduction by Robert Crumb.
Yeah, and who will come across later. But this basically he talks about
a comic strip memoir about being a John.
Yeah, so he talks about paying for sex workers and that. And it's a very interesting book. It's like I say, it's not the type of thing that kids would read or should read or whatever.
It's probably too small for me to show people.
Yeah, it's but he talks about his relationships with some of the sex workers that he's involved with and all that. And I know these days with your political correctness and incorrectness,
there's a difference.
That someone will get offended by, God knows, most of what's in this book, right? So that's another reason I pick a good one for the forbidden books if it's good at offending people, because a good book usually will offend someone out there, right? So paying for it, definitely worth paying for.
Here we have American Splendor, big bicentennial issue.
Now this is the first issue. This is I figured I'd throw in Harvey Picar's American Splendor, because brilliantly written. But I mean, of course, once again today, I know that certain politically incorrect people would want to ban this, or so-called politically correct.
That's what they think.
Politically brittle people wouldn't want. And that's the other thing. Anyone reading this, if you're brittle in any way or you're faint of heart, turn this off right now. 'Cause this is for people who can really take it, right? But very funny. Very, very funny.
If you find
worth it.
Any of these books in a room they shouldn't be, make sure to read them yourselves and remove them.
Now, this is another magazine now. I figured I'd do two magazines. Heavy Metal. Now, of course, look at that to start out with, right? It's, amazing art. I mean, there was nudity.
Does have pretty good art,
there was nudity in it, everything like that, and violence, but it changed a whole generation of comic book artists, including me and my friend Jerry. When we read this, we were used to reading Superman and Iron Man and all this type of crap, and we read this, and it was just like, oh my God! Like, let's have a quick look. It changed our whole entire idea as to what comics were. So because it had stuff like this one, Den, this is being
Oh, that's pretty cool looking.
This is being. Yeah.
No, you gotta show them that.
This is being reprinted. Oh, careful now.
They're like, don't rip the book, don't rip the book. Yeah. It's so precious.
And it's, let me show it. And it's also has, where is it? Oh yeah, Arzak by...
any of those pages, they look amazing.
Yeah, Arzak by Mobius. And I mean, even the back cover here, that Drouillet drawing on the back. And there was another one in here too. This one, for some reason, I always liked.
Oh, this one looks way more interesting than the last one you showed me.
Yeah. I mean, this was an anthology, so it was a bunch of different artists doing comics. But loved it. I loved it. The funny thing was, actually, in the back of this drawing here for this ad, by a guy I had, Carolyn, as a teacher in down at the School of Visual Arts a long time ago.
I see.
So kind of ironic that he's in that, one of my favorites. Oh, okay, and now this goes along with Joe Madden and the boys. This is Hate. This is one of my favorite and one of the funniest books out there. I love the style is very different, very unusual.
It's one that reminds me of Ren and Stimpy.
Yeah, and it's even funnier than Ren and Stimpy. It's hilarious. It was basically you follow Buddy Bradley and his adventures with his pals Stinky and George Hamilton.
I'm trying to give you a different head.
And Lisa Leavenworth and this whole crowd of them. But I mean, very, 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 very funny. He's like someone once called the Bradleys, the Buddy Bradley and his family, the Simpsons on acid. And this is what it's like. It got the same sense of humor, but it's just totally out of control, right? Okay. And I mean, it's a very different style for me, even but I fell in love with the style. But the comics themselves are just absolutely hilarious. This is his girlfriend, Lisa. I mean, there's mad sex. There's everything happening in it, right? And so, I mean, this one I know that there's some who are who are socially brittle, who, if they start to read this, they'd be like, oh my god, and then they'd have to shut it down because it is just a bit too real.
Too risque.
A bit too risque and a bit too real for them. Actually, I'd forgotten there were two other books here. Actually, I had left them over here. Which is Robert Crumb, The Weirdo Years. And of course, Robert Crumb, I mean, he does all this highly sexualized work, so of course everyone, especially a lot of feminists, hate him and stuff like that. But to me,
I was wondering why his name sounded familiar.
yeah, but he's very, very funny. I love his stuff. I mean, especially back in the day, it was very, very revolutionary. This was underground comics, right? It's not meant to be nice or whatever, right? But yeah, I think Crumb is. I'm one of these people who thinks Crumb is a genius, and he is. He's just, even though some of it borders on the racist or whatever, he does it on purpose, as opposed to someone who is a racist. He does it to expose racism, and people take it as that he's racist. I think, right?
That's just how the world is sometimes.
Yeah. Now this one here is one of my all-time favorite Palomar, the Heartbreak Soup stories from Gilbert Hernandez. And I don't know how many times I'd seen reports over years of some kid would take this book out from their local library because they'd just look at it, oh look, cartoons or whatever, and then they'd bring it home and they'd start to read it.
This should not be in local libraries.
No.
Just putting that out there before you come for us.
Yeah, because there's all kinds of sex and violence, but the story itself it's one of the amazing comic book stories out there. And him and his brother, believe it or not, they do write some great comics with women as the lead characters. So
Here
one of my favorites. And this is the last but not least, and definitely this I think is one of the number one forbidden books.
Really?
Oh yeah, because I know people who Trots and Bonnie appeared in the National Lampoon magazine in the 70s, and by Sherry Flanagan. She was one of the great woman cartoonists of our time, and it's basically highly sexualized. You can
wouldn't think it just by looking at it.
Oh yeah, it has a real innocent look to it, but it's basically Trots and Bonnie, and
this is how they get you, kids.
Yeah, and Bonnie, she it's basically her sexual awakening with her and her friend Pepsi.
No shade to the author. It's just like people get them into the libraries without knowing what they are first. You should probably read the book first.
Yeah.
Or this is what we're showing you. We're going to show you this book before you order it.
Yeah. Well, there's nudity in this and all that. These are young girls, and some people get upset about that. But it's just like, well, she's writing about her experiences. Trots and Bonnie is a. It really is it's a satire, like this one, her dressing her friend up as a tampon, right? And it's just every episode would just get worse and worse. And now I found out after buying this too that she'd even left out some comic strips that she couldn't even sort of put in, right? Years later when reading it. But I know people who've read it who are just absolutely like traumatized from reading it. So unless you're, you got a strong stomach, but it's very funny. It's still very funny. If you're a sick person like me with a black sense of humor, this is bloody hilarious. And to me, the darker the sense of humor, the better.
I don't know if I'm on that level, but I'm somewhere.
Yeah, you're pretty close. Some of the jokes that you've told me or made of me have been pretty dark.
They're there.
But see, I can take it. I'm not brittle, right? Anyways, that's our Forbidden Fruit Naughty Comics episode. These are all great comics, all worth buying. So get out there, support these people who, in this time of political incorrectness, as you say, and I agree, are basically punished for their talent. So it's just like, screw that. Go out and buy these people and fight the good fight. I think more publishers got to be. We need a code of bravery for the publishers today, of like, put out these books and just don't give a damn what people think about them, because the rest of us who are actually buying them don't care. We want to see this stuff.
Well, not the youngsters though.
No, not. You keep it away from the youngsters. But it's important something for them to read then when they get older, because like I'd explained to some of my students years ago about the racist comics from cartoons from the 30s and 40s, and you could explain it to the kids till you're blue in the face. They just sit there chewing their gum or looking at their phones. But when you showed them the racist cartoons, and they were like shocked and all that. And I said, "See," and they'd be like, "This is a real cartoon that was put out?" And
I was shocked with some of them. I was like, "You can't be serious."
Yeah, and it's so much more important for people to see, because then they realize it, and then they can champion whatever cause with at least some knowledge. Then, right? Mm-hmm. Instead of just blindly shooting their mouths off. Anyway, that being said, we do love to shoot our mouths off. We are two people who just can't keep quiet, can't we?
We both have our own causes.
Yeah. Anyway, that being said, check out the upcoming next 2 weeks of Thursday Comics. We got 2 giant-sized editions that Dennis ripped off there the other day, so they're worth watching. That being said, time to go and get some chocolate chip cookies. Bye! Woo! Okay.